Hey there, Shawna Karrasch here with another Ask Shawna answer, coming to you from North Carolina this time. Okay, so this question I got is from Ross, and she says, hi Shawna, can you please tell me about how you go about fading the clicker? I've been working on a number of exercises with my horse, such as desensitizing and putting tack on, and she is really good, and this is pretty old. So I would like to understand how I can fade this out so I don't need to use a clicker every time I do these things. Thanks. Okay, this is a good question because for me, the goal really is to fade the clicker, the target, those things out. You want to teach them, you want to build a good reinforcement history, but for a lot of the behaviors, I want to build up more time and make it more random and teach them just how to do the behaviors. So the first thing I really do is start building duration. So let's say, for example, putting the tack on. So at first, there's probably places where you typically kind of like segments where you kind of typically reinforce them. So maybe every time you put the saddle on, and then every time you hook the girth up, and then, whatever those components would be. Well, instead of doing it right where you typically do it, go a little bit further. So let's say it's every time you put the saddle on, you stop, you click, you say good, or you put it on, click, and stop and reinforce. Instead, just put it on and kind of keep going and give it, 4 more seconds at first, because it's still a new concept at first. So then click and reinforce a little bit further. Pretty soon you're going to put on the saddle and put on the girth, and then you might reinforce. Pretty soon you're going to put on the saddle, put on the girth, walk around, walk over to the mounting block, and then you might reinforce. So you're building up the time and making it longer and longer and longer. So that is really the best way to fade the clicker and the target, or whatever you might be using, out of the situations. The target might be a little different because you may need to fade it out differently, and that would be specific for every behavior you might be teaching. But with a clicker, that's what I do, is I build duration. Another example would be when I taught Mint to do his counter departs. So he didn't know right lead from left lead. He just didn't know the signals. So I did everything I could and set him up so he's on the correct lead. And then I ask and he gives me the correct one. It was as soon as he committed. We didn't even canter. It was the second he committed, because I'm working with his head. I want his mind to think it. If his mind is thinking it, his body will follow. So that's when I was clicking and reinforcing. Well, so I did that for a few days. So right and left, and we didn't even canter. And then I added a couple strides onto that. And then I add like 6 strides onto that. And then, so, this is going over a week. And, at the end of a week, I'm going halfway around the arena before I click and reinforce. And then the next thing you know, I'm going around a couple times and clicking and reinforcing. Next thing you know, I'm going down, I'm doing a downward transition, I'm going upward, and so I just keep tacking more and more onto it. So it becomes longer and longer and longer. But one caveat I want to add there that I think is really important, and that we have a tendency to do, we then have a tendency to forget about it altogether. I try to never forget about it altogether. So while we might be doing great and we've never had a problem and things are going good, I still sometimes will click and reinforce. I'll bridge and feed for that initial counter depart. And I'll just say, thank you, you're really good at that, and I like it. So don't always make it that it's at the end. Sometimes use your bridge signal, your clicker, earlier. Sometimes use it midway through, so they don't really know where it counts. If they know it only matters at the very end, you're going to kind of lose energy, and you may lose energy and lose try on the early end. So I just kind of mix it up. But that can be really pretty random. So that is the best way to start fading things. So we talked about... Okay, that was for putting tack. For desensitizing, well, that would be a little bit more, you would continue to grow on that as well. So looking for a little bit more and looking for a little bit more and looking for a little bit more, always working within their comfort zone or under threshold. But as you get it where they're getting better and better and better, you look for a little bit more. Pretty soon you're asking them to do more, maybe do something else. And again, the same principles would apply. Sometimes go back and say, you know what, that was good right off the bat, and sometimes longer. So it's really extending it. Extending the behavior is how we begin to fade it out, and we put more on and more on and more on and more on. For sometimes there's things that, I've faded it out a lot of the way. A lot of times there's trailer loading, they just get in the trailer and I don't really worry about it. I still might reinforce them, but I don't necessarily have a clicker and a side bucket on me. I may just, once they load on, I use a verbal bridge signal to say, okay, and then go get them a carrot so they know that they've done a good job. but I don't necessarily do everything with it. I also teach them that I have the potential to go get food at any time. So this way, and I reinforce them all throughout everything they do, so everything is important. It's not like, oh, here comes a training session, now it's important. So just because I don't have a side bucket on me or a clicker on me, they realize I can be reinforced at any point in time. So this helps them to pay attention to each and every little thing, and it helps them to be really good and solid for all the little things in between. Anyway, okay, Roz, I hope that helped you out. If you have more questions or more specifics, don't hesitate to send them in and ask. Anyway, I hope that helped. And if you or anybody else has questions, don't forget, you can always get a hold of me at askshawna.com. Anyway, until next time, enjoy getting your horse on target. Bye.